Welcome to this Thanksgiving weekend edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine we put together with our thanks to you for listening. At the Virginia Institute for Public Policy, find out more about us at tertiumquids.org. We have an all-star lineup that we begin right now. He is the author of Trumponomics now, and hopefully more and more people getting it for their Christmas gift-giving list inside, creating this great economic recovery in 2 years, eye-popping. Steve Moore. Steve, good morning. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, Joe. Never better. Thanks for having me.
And I hope the book is just flying off the shelves faster than Mustangs or hotcakes or whatever.
We're doing well, thanks to people like you who are doing a nice job promoting it. And, the economy is, as you said, it's the strongest it's been in 30 years. And people are kind of wondering why did this happen? And we really go into how Trump came across these ideas, how Larry Kudlow and Art Laffer and I gave advice to Trump about tax cuts and deregulation and promoting American energy. And, basically Trump knew what he wanted to do, which is get the government off the back of business. And I'm always asked, what was the key to Trump's success? And I think it was really pretty simple, Joe, that he's a businessman and a successful businessman, and he knows how to help business and help. By the way, when you help businesses, you help workers, right? Because when businesses do better,
we work for somebody.
Workers do better. So that's the story, and it's a fun one because Trump he's got an amazing persona, and there's a lot I love about Trump and a lot I don't like about Trump, but
I think it's his way
of how he did it.
I think a lot of us say, "Well, I don't know if I would say it that way," but then again, we didn't get elected president, so maybe what does that tell you? But that's
the one thing, Joe. Just I've learned not to second guess Trump, because he is always underestimated by his opponents. I think liberals, at their own peril, underestimate Trump, or they think, "Oh, he's just an idiot. He's a fool." They used to say that about Reagan. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Reagan, he's just a grade B actor. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then, Reagan rebuilt our economy, and Trump is doing that. And I just think it's hilarious that Obama's been out there the last couple of weeks trying to take credit for the Trump expansion. I mean, Trump's gotten us to 4% growth, something Obama never did in 8 years. Mm-hmm. And, you see the ramp up
wage growth.
How people feel good about it. I think 7 or 8 out of 10 Americans now rate the economy as good or great. Under the Obama presidency, it was 3 or 4 out of 10.
Yeah, no, and the wage growth is the latest piece of that. I've got to ask you though to be careful not to talk. Here in Charlottesville, our big economic news is Goodwill stores is expanding. So we need your help down here. Specifically, can I bring you down for like 6 months to work on my House of Delegates and Board of Supervisors candidates to get some Trumpish economy going on here? It's scary.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've lived in Virginia for 30 years. I lived in Northern Virginia, and in the time I've been here, Virginia's gone from a red state to a purple state, and now after these most recent elections last year and this year, you'd have to say Virginia is now officially a blue state, and it's moved more and more liberal, and it's mostly because of the region that I live in. But you look at what happened in Richmond with Dave Bratt going down. And Dave Bratt was a great congressman. I mean, he was very pro-growth. He was behind and with Trump on all of these economic changes. And, we lost a really good congressman. And Dave Bratt, I feel really bad. It's one of the elections I feel real bad about. I actually think Republicans did pretty well, all things considered. On Tuesday, there was no blue wave. It turned into a blue trickle.
Yeah,
but,
in a couple of places.
But some really good people went down, and Dave Bratt is one of them. So a shout-out to my friend Dave Bratt. You were a great congressman. I hope he runs again in 2 years. He'll take her out in 2 years if he does.
Well, and I think, no offense to Abigail Spanberger and the Democrats of the 7th District, I think the Republicans did as much to Dave Bratt as the Democrats did.
That's a great point. When you get a disruptor like Dave Bratt is, sometimes it's people in the party itself. I know there were some of the Eric Cantor's folks who are still,
stinging,
feeling some ill ease about the way Bratt took him on. But look, I mean, all in all, it was a pretty good election. I mean, Republicans picked up 3 or 4. We don't know exactly how many Senate seats Republicans won, but that was interesting. And people kept saying to me, "Well, the problem was the economy wasn't a big issue for Americans," and it's kind of true it wasn't, but that's because the economy's doing so well, right?
It's
so
ironic.
People were saying, "Gee, why is healthcare the number one issue now?" Well, healthcare is the number one issue because jobs in the economy aren't the number one issue anymore because we've got such a booming economy. Sometimes I think, Joe, that people take prosperity for granted.
You're
they
true.
think, well, the economy's doing great. Now we can elect some liberal, Democrat who will give me free health care.
Right.
Well, if you don't have a job, the free health care isn't going to matter that much.
It's the cake and eat it too strategy. Stephen Moore, author of Trumponomics, but one of the great economic minds, free marketeer. Since Adam Smith, there's like Adam Smith and Steve Moore on the list.
Well, I've got to say, my co-author of the book, though, Art Laffer, he's an iconic economist, maybe one of the 4 or 5 most important economists of the last 50 years.
This is true.
If not the most. And, Art Laffer, who's, like a second father to me. I love Art Laffer. And, when we decided to do the book together, by the way, originally we were going to do it with Larry Kudlow. And, of course, Larry got a higher calling in life, and he's now at the White House. But, isn't that great that Larry Kudlow is the chief economist for the country, basically. And but Laffer, we think about this, Joe, Laffer designed the Reagan tax cut in 1981. And then, he had played a big, big role. The first economist that Donald Trump called when he started to run for president was Art Laffer. And it wasn't until a little later that he asked Larry Kudlow and I to get involved with the campaign. But it was so much fun working with Trump. He is an amazing character. We have so many stories about Trump in the book, but he is more energy than anyone I've ever met in my whole life.
Well, let me ask you, and I've been watching him since he built his first building and went to, the mattresses against Ed Koch in New York back in the 80s. And I watched that Rose Garden, and unfortunately the Jim Acosta stuff is taking away from what I thought was, vintage Trump in the way he was treating Nancy Pelosi. He tweeted out and he said, hey, if you need some votes, I'll help get some Republicans. When he explained why this was a great day for him, because now he could get more people to support his agenda, I thought that was brilliant, politicking, leadership,
For somebody, Joe, you're 100% right. By the way, I wish he hadn't done that with Jim Acosta, because all he's done is make Acosta look like a martyr. Why call any attention to this jerk? This is the best thing that ever happened to Jim Acosta. So I wish he hadn't. Look, Jim Acosta's a jerk. He's abusive to the president, no question about it. He doesn't belong on shame on CNN for having him as their White House correspondent. But by locking him out like this, now he's like a hero of the left. And so I think that was probably a mistake. But you're right about Nancy Pelosi. I just wrote my column. It's on National Review this morning about how, Pelosi's the greatest gift that ever happened to Trump, because Pelosi is like the least popular person in America. I mean, Trump is unpopular, but Pelosi's more unpopular than he is. And so I think he'll be able to use her as a foil. She has no agenda. You see, the first thing she wants to do is investigate Trump's tax returns.
Right.
I mean, gee, there's an agenda that's going to help America.
Well, but that's the thing. I think when he talked about, well, now I can get some Democrats and Republicans to vote for things, I worry for my Democrat friends what happens to this unhinged factor of the zealotry that they use to win some of these seats when, Abigail Spanberger is part of some Rose Garden ceremony to sign a budget bill that Trump and Mitch McConnell and some Republicans and Democrats got together. This unhinged far left, activist crowd is going to go pitchforks and torches because
that's why I don't think it's going to. I think Trump was just kind of playing around a little bit. I mean, look, Nancy Pelosi is not going to cooperate with Donald Trump on a single thing. Zero. I mean, she is the head of the quote resistance, and Trump knows that. I mean, he was basically saying, "Oh, now we can work together." Of course, Nancy Pelosi is like laughing, but Trump is not stupid. He knows that, and he's basically saying, "Let's work together." And she's going to say, "Oh no, we're not going to work together." But she's going to try to advance. She basically says, "Well, we're going to do impeachment. We're going to do investigations. We're going to demand that he do his tax returns. We're going to do repeal the Trump tax cut. All of those things are wildly unpopular with 70% of Americans. Now, to the hard left, they're popular, but I think Pelosi and the Democrats will overplay their hand, and I think it sets up Trump very nicely, because now people are going to say, which agenda do I want? Do I want the Trump agenda that's rebuilt the economy, or this deranged agenda of Nancy Pelosi, which is just to disrupt and try to prevent America from advancing?
Steve, before I let you go, I have to ask you, as an economist, then, what do you think the next 2 years? How does the administration keep the economy?
We've laid the groundwork for a big, continuous boom. Now, look, if Pelosi were able to repeal the tax cuts and so on, I wouldn't feel that way. But she's not going to be able to do that, right? Because you've got a Republican Senate and you've got a president who would veto any of those bills. So, no, I'm very optimistic about the stock market, about the economy overall. I think we're going to grow at 3 or 4%. And I think if I'm right, Joe, and we talk a lot about this in the book, if I'm right that we stay on this path, I mean, Donald Trump's going to win a 40-state mega re-election.
Wow,
he's going to win a landslide, because people can go, I don't want to go back to the way things were under Bush and Obama when the economy sucked and just wasn't growing at all. So I think Trump's nicely set up. Now, look, if I'm wrong and the economy goes in the tank, we're talking about President Elizabeth Warren, but I just don't think that's going to happen.
All right. Well, I appreciate that insight on it, because I think that's more important to me than anything is, does the economy, whether Charlottesville is tapped into it or not right now, and our booming goodwill industry, but that the growth and the opportunities across the country need to continue. Do you think they could make the tax cuts permanent, though?
That could be tough too, because Pelosi is not going to allow virtually any productive legislation.
But some of them ran on that.
Some infrastructure and immigration reform. But the good news is, just don't get worried, folks, because those tax cuts, I helped write the bill, those tax cuts don't expire until something like 2025. So we've got plenty of time to make those permanent. He can do that in his second term.
All right. Well, I appreciate Steve Moore. Again, the book is Trumponomics, Amazon, as well as Barnes and Noble and the brick and mortar shops as well. And we're going to look for that National Review piece, and I'll link that up on the podcast when this goes up there. Thank you so much.
It's called Trump v. Pelosi.
We'll find it. Stephen Moore, thank you so much again. I always feel 6 inches taller and a better dancer for talking to you.
Thanks, Joe.
From Less Government, and it's been too long, Seton Motely with, it's almost like you were listening to the program. Ken Cuccinelli and I were talking about this very thing, jumping off of not just the hair on fire, mysterious vote, appearances. It's like Penn and Teller are making votes appear in Florida every couple hours.
Yes.
But then also the social justice warrior using some amazing phrases on Tucker Carlson's daughter here in Charlottesville at Farmington. I don't know if it's just the money, but it sure as hell seems to me like it's the money. Seton Motely, the column is "The Way to End Our Cold Civil War, Get Back to Less Government." And that's what Ken and I were talking about, but I don't know how we do that unless we wait for it to collapse and just hope that each state can kind of survive on its own and recreate everything, because every time a government collapses, a dictatorship follows it.
Well, we don't look. Trump is reducing government, and Trump is substantially reducing government. And the reason he takes a shot at California's stupid policies with regard to wildfires is because it isn't just California's problem. Mm-hmm. They let their state burn, and then they come to the feds and go, bail us out, please.
Right.
And that's not supposed to be happening. We're supposed to have the tension arises, and we're at a very high level of tension in America, because the Founding Fathers knew we were going to have a big country with a bunch of different sections that think very differently from one another. Mm-hmm. And they wanted as many collective decisions as possible to be made locally, so that people who are largely in agreement and understanding with one another would get together and make decisions and not override basic tenets of people's lives, beliefs, and existences.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a federal court mandate all of a sudden that gay marriage is legal, well, there's large chunks of the country that go, one, that's not in the Constitution, and two, we don't believe that here.
Mm-hmm. And
now San Francisco is going to dictate how Texas views marriage? Or as I put in the piece, you know, if you manage to exhume and revive any founding father and said, okay, there was a San Francisco, California baker who wanted to make a homosexual wedding cake, and a Lakewood, Colorado baker who didn't want to make a homosexual wedding cake, and the government ended up forcing the Lakewood, Colorado baker to make a cake anyway, the revived founding father would begin throwing flour in the Snake River and ask, what the hell have you been waiting on? Let's start another revolution.
Oh, without question, because you make the great point is that by forcing somebody to engage in commerce, then you're actually denying somebody else the opportunity to engage in that commerce. And it goes, you know, through the courts, but it also goes through our budget process. Ken and I were talking about the 20-some-odd trillion dollars that we're in debt. Is in
21 now.
Yeah,
yes, go ahead.
Is in a large part, as I view it, the federal government buying its way around those very constitutional provisions that they haven't managed to get an activist judge to rule on. They just pay us off to look the other way. They go and drop a bag of money in your police department's lap or in your school division's lap and say, we shouldn't have a say here, but you're not going to say anything because we just gave you a whole big bag of money. And by the way, there's another one coming next year.
And the bribery is a large part of it. I love the Democrats teeing up to go after Trump on the emollients clause when half the federal budget is in violation of the Constitution just for starters. Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid make up half the federal budget already. They cost more than $2 trillion a year. You cannot find a justification for the federal government engaging in those activities in the Constitution.
Nope.
You simply cannot. But they're going to pull out the old chestnut, the emollients clause, and in the name of constitutional duty and allegiance, they're going to go after Trump. I'm like, really? Explain to me Medicare. I remember years ago when they were passing Obamacare, a CNS News reporter asked Nancy Pelosi, where in the Constitution is the federal government empowered to do this? And she said, you're kidding, right? You're joking. This isn't a serious question. Next question.
Good answer, Nancy. Way to dodge it.
The founding fathers foresaw all of these problems, all of this tension.
Yep, it's amazing.
All of this heightened friction between people. And the reason we have friction is because every time we turn around in an elevator, we bump into two different levels of government.
Wow.
If the government gives us more elbow room, allows for localities to make decisions for themselves, and not to these one-size-fit-none federal impositions, these tensions go away.
Yeah,
because the South will make decisions that the Northeast won't make.
And you can
the Midwest will make decisions that California won't make, and you're not forcing California's decisions on the Midwest, or conversely, the Midwest decisions on California.
All right, hang on one second, Seton. The Cold Civil War, Seton Motely, Less Government on Joe Thomas in the Morning. Visiting with Seton Motely from lessgovernment.org, and he's got a column out, our Cold Civil War. It's amazing turn of a phrase there, Seton. And one of the things, we're always looking for more money, and here in Virginia, all of a sudden we're seeing internet sales tax.
The Supreme Court, the five clowns and gowns that just ruled that a state can charge a business sales tax even if the state the business doesn't exist in the state.
Yep.
Well, California's going to raise their sales tax to 500% and then chase companies all around the country that they just ran out of the state because their tax policies are so stupid.
That is exactly the problem with the internet sales tax. Is it's a way for these states that have horrible business environments to not have to worry about it anymore and not care in any way.
What it is on steroids is, look, I'm a Florida resident now. Anytime you rent a car or rent a hotel room, the tax is insane. Why? Because if you live in Florida, you're probably not renting cars and hotel rooms. They're trying to soak people that don't vote in Florida.
Hey, by the way, can I send a bunch of votes with Rick Scott's name down to you, and can you drop them off in Broward County for me?
As a matter of fact, I just made a meme. I grabbed a picture of Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss cutting into the shark on the dock. I said, it says, "Look, Florida ballot."
Oh, that's classic. That's what it seems like. Every time a fish gets open, there's another.
Right.
It's amazing.
Dreyfuss has the knife, and Scheider has the strobe light. They're both staring into the gut of the fish.
But it's amazing. But I think this goes into what your column is about, is that these offices become so precious to people. They hang their entire livelihoods on this. And you were mentioning the founding fathers and how they had never intended the government to be this important. This was in a world where 1/3 of the country was passionately loyal to the king. 1/3 of the country was passionately interested in independence, and the other third was sitting there saying, I just want to go to work. And they were the ones that Patrick Henry was talking to when he said, "Give me liberty." He was trying to wake them up. And finally, hey, surprisingly, overtaxation is what drove that other third to join the second. But for the most part, we all have our own things to do. We shouldn't be so worried about who our senator is or who our congressman is. They're not supposed to be that important to us.
And it's been said by many that when the left went into full Kavanaugh freakout, he's a judge. When the founding fathers viewed the Supreme Court as so unimportant, they didn't even give it a building.
Right. It was in the basement.
They used to meet in someone's basement, some office's basement or something. I mean, it was not supposed to be this important, but of course it's become a super legislature of unelected clowns and gowns because our Congress doesn't pass laws anymore.
No. Seton Motely and his piece, "The Way to End Our Cold Civil War," in a town where you've got rich Farmington members attacking TV presenters and rich Glenmore residents chanting "No ice, no wall," except for the one around their community. Seton, are there politicos who are starting to get this, to stand up against this deep state or the statism?
Has Chuck Grassley ever been this vocal and this active?
No.
Except in the post-Trump era? No. Marco Rubio, Rick Scott, who I've met in person. I actually put together a healthcare panel in opposition to Obamacare 10 years ago, whatever the hell it was. And he's a very nice guy, don't get me wrong, but you hear his voice. He's a very mild-mannered dude, and he's going to war in Florida, not just, and I don't think just because it's his seat that he's prospectively losing, but I think Trump is emboldening people that were never previously emboldened, and it's fantastic. And I'm hoping that spreads. I mean, I'd love to see, for example, Jim Jordan become the minority leader in the House rather than Kevin McCarthy. That would be a good sign that things are changing in the right direction. But we lost, they had 40-some retirements, but they were the old school never Trump type of Republican.
Yep.
And, of course, that made it harder to defend an open seat than an incumbent seat. But I think long-term, I think that's a definite shift to our advantage because now we'll have, more gutsy, strong-willed conservatives running to fill those seats in 2 years that we just didn't have this time. Because you remember when they were retiring, in a lot of instances, we didn't have enough time to gin up, proper replacements for them. Well, obviously, 2 years from now, we will. And so I think the optimism, and I'm a pretty cynical dude at this point, the optimism is you're seeing signs of life from people who've been there forever and shown none, and I think that's a direct result of Trump being Trump.
Well, but doesn't the fear in your title of your column, Seton Motely, President of Less Government, the way to end our cold civil war? My worry is that those who are seeing their power disappear in the less government, the lower regulations, the smaller bureaucracies.
Well, that's what the whole deep state thing's about. Absolutely.
Right, but they're going to become more like this social justice warrior at Farmington, and more Maxine Waters. And it's going to become a hot one.
The analogy I use is, okay, we've let a wasp nest grow on our porch for 50 years.
And now
the wasps haven't stung us because we let them grow their nest. Well, that's D.C. since the 1960s. Mm-hmm. Well, now we've got Trump coming in and swatting the nest. Are the wasps going to get angry in the short term? You're damn right they are. Are they going to make a lot more noise? You're damn right they are. But then the question becomes, you have two options: take out the nest or leave it alone. And I'd prefer to take out the nest.
Yeah, and I think Trump is the one guy who, like you said, emboldening some to say, listen, this is going to happen anyway. I think the subtext is the left wants people to think, and I think Republicans and Democrats alike in the state, connected to the state, want people to not run because they're afraid of getting assaulted in the restaurant or harassed as they drive down the street.
That's right. That's a silencing mechanism too, to be sure.
Oh yeah, but I think Trump is showing them, listen, just keep, be right, be thoughtful, to figure it out first before you go out there, because obviously just doing it to do it.
And we were talking off the air about about Tucker Carlson.
Yeah,
these people are wusses. He attacks Tucker Carlson's 19-year-old daughter. The son walks in, and the guy beats feet out of the country club.
Right, and goes and finds Michael Avenatti. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, great. Let him run for president in 2020.
Well, yeah, I think at this point he's just looking for billable hours. Yeah,
but no, I mean, I think, look, we're the one. I hate to say this, but they hate guns. We have them all. I don't know what math they're doing, but it's not very good. It's government school math, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think
my favorite video, I don't know if you saw it several months ago, that Antifa guy that pepper sprayed that big conservative guy. I mean, he's a pretty big dude. This guy looked like an MMA fighter. This guy was a big dude. And he got sprayed or hit with a baton, one of the two or three times, and he finally just turned one punch, and you could tell from the video the guy was out before he hit the ground, he was completely unconscious. And then all the whiners around the Antifa guy, what are you hitting him for? Because he was beating me with a nightstick. What the hell do you expect me to do?
What was the guy's name? I got your phone cut out right as you told us the name of the guy.
Oh, I don't know the name of the guy.
Okay.
He looks like an MMA fighter. I don't know the guy. He's just some random Trump supporter or a random non-leftist in the street, and the little skinny-armed Antifa guy started beating on him with a stick. He just turned in one punch, and the guy lifted off the ground. It was like the punch and snatch when Brad Pitt goes down, and it's like slow motion, and the guy's flying through the air, and he's completely unconscious. The split second the fist hit his jaw. I mean, I'm not advocating violence, but I'm certainly not saying if they're beating you with a stick, you can't fight back.
Exactly. Hey, Seton, thank you so much. It's, again, lessgovernment.org, lessgovernment.org. Seton Motely, president there. Go read the column. We'll link it up. The way to end our cold civil war. Less government's got to be the answer, but we got to do it on our terms, because if it collapses, as I said yesterday, if there had been talk radio in Greece or Rome as their democracies were collapsing, I have a feeling it would sound an awful lot like this.
Breads and circuses, yeah.
That's exactly. Thank you, sir. God bless.
God bless. Thank you.
It's dogged me, for some time. I feel like 1% of the population is getting 99% of the media coverage because we just love the drama, I guess. And that so many more of us aren't involved in what statue is in front of the courthouse, and we just want to get on with our day, raise our kids. get them to, know right from wrong. And I thought, one of the best folks to talk to about this is Dr. Alveda King, Evangelist. She's written a column about this, so I saw, and I said, we got to get Alveda back on the program. Alveda, God bless you. Thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
I'm wonderful, and good morning, and happy holidays to you and all your listeners.
Well, there's so much to give thanks for, if we think about it. Unfortunately, my brothers and sisters in the media insist on showing all the people who insist on dividing us against each other. Am I wrong in feeling like, this 1% of the population that's dancing in front of the camera isn't indicative of the way the other 99% of us feel about one another?
Absolutely. We do not feel that way about each other. But there's a scripture where sin abounds, grace abounds that much more. So we really never hear good news. And I don't mean just the gospel in the Bible, but just good news about how people care for each other, what people do for each other, even with the disasters like the fires out in California. Mm-hmm. There's so many prayer groups that are just praying, God, stop the fires, whether we agree with the people of California or some of the ideology and all of that. But we care about people, and it's human nature. There is still some good in humankind.
Well, and if we realize this, I live on a street that I would have to say I was the only Republican yard sign on it, but I love my neighbors. They're cool people. I think that's what we are. The message here in Charlottesville after August 12th, 2017 was, if we know each other, even in passing, say hello to each other at the coffee shop or the gas station or as we're cutting the grass, it's harder for somebody to come into town, whatever town you're in, and divide us against each other. Because they could say, oh, Alveda King is whatever they want to tell me Alveda King is, and I can say, hold it, I know her. That's not true at all. And it diminishes their power the more we are interacted with each other.
That is exactly what we need to do. I know my pastor was teaching, I believe Wednesday, and he says, when you hear people saying something that's wrong or negative about somebody, don't listen to it and don't agree with it. And I did have an interview recently even talking about Mrs. Hillary Clinton and her thing. Now she's announced and tweeted that abortion is a woman's right and we're going to fight for this and all of that. I said, well, that's just not a right. That's a civil wrong. It's a moral wrong. So, Mrs. Clinton is angry. She's just full of rage and she's power hungry and she's a hurt and broken woman. I said, so while we disagree with all of that, let's pray for her as well. And it's hard, I've been taught along the way by my own family and the King family legacy as the daughter of Reverend A.D. King, brother of Martin Luther King Jr., mm-hmm. that it's hard to hate somebody when you pray for them,
Well, and that's one of the most important things we talk about. I brought this up in the wake of the recounts and all of these rhetoric in Florida. I said, if Senator Nelson thought a baby was as precious as a vote, maybe we wouldn't be in half our problems there. Because
oh, my goodness.
Well, but it's, we're telling every one of these pieces of paper is this precious item, yet we talk about reproductive rights as if, somehow that somebody is keeping you from reproducing when actually the abortion clinics are the very things that are keeping us from reproducing.
And reproduction is a right, not abortion. And if we're not ready to conceive, or in some cases where women are abused, sex trafficking, human trafficking, rape, and matters like that, we found statistically and scientifically that even when a woman's pregnancy is unexpected or undesired, if she aborts that child, she's going to open herself up to more trauma, more depression, possibly breast cancer, cervical cancer, some biological issues. So abortion is never going to be the best answer for a traumatized woman, a mother who's ready to be a mother, even in some cases, God forbid, and it's horrible, even young girls. So there has to be something in our hearts and in our society where we begin to change the behavior that causes all of these very sad circumstances.
Well, and meanwhile, we see some of the same political types defending sex traffickers as they hide themselves in these mass caravans coming to our southern border, Dr. King. And it's just that's what fascinates me is they seem to want to have their cake ideologically and eat it too. Is this part of the problem? Is that we're looking at elected officials to do the things that we need to do individually? I think of our friends at the pregnancy centers of Central Virginia and how these doctors and nurses and these advocates voluntarily help these women make great choices and help the young men in their lives make the right choices towards adoptions and keeping families together. But that's not an elected official doing that. We need to stop looking at these office holders as if they're the answer.
If we continue to do what's right because it's right from our positions, not in the elected seats or what we call the seats of power, but just people. And you can put, along with our politicians, sometimes our pastors and church leaders as well, and sometimes either wanting to do what's comfortable or what's convenient or just out of greed or out of guilt or various positions not informed properly. And so we must continue to speak out and to cry out ourselves. Recently, I've been reading the prayer that Daniel prayed. And we know that the angel Gabriel went to Daniel and said, listen, your prayer was answered right away when you prayed it, but it took me 40 days to get through and fight through all of the demonic influence. So we can pray and we can do what's right because it's right ourselves. And as we continue to do that, there can be a groundswell, as well as from the top down, the bottom up can do that, and we can meet in power. So, but we have to do our parts. And there were some who, and in some instances, there will be some midterm elections. Midterm runoffs. And so we still have to go back to the poll. We're not worshiping government like President Trump says. We're worshiping God, but we still need to vote. You know, the word civil and civility comes from the Latin word meaning citizen.
Yep.
So citizenship is very important, and as citizens, we have a duty and a responsibility to see about our government. We really do.
Absolutely, and I think all of our humility, if we're reminded, why we bow heads, is to show humility. I think we've lost a decent amount of humility in that too, Dr. King. Thank you so. Again, you can find her online at alvedaking.com, Evangelist Alveda King, also at civilrightsfortheunborn.com. God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us again, and you're always a blessing to have on the air with us.
And look for my new Christmas song, "Oh Holy Night," on my new album, Tender Moments, Alone with God.
Tender Moments Alone with God. I'm going to go look for that and add it to our musical rotation around here for Christmas. Thank you, Dr. King, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving as well.
You too, God bless.
400 years ago, we tried to settle this nation around the idea of a commune existence, and we nearly starved to death in the process. Since then, entrepreneurship has been at the core of American exceptionalism, and perhaps none better than Willie Robertson of Duck Dynasty, Duck Commander, Buck Commander, has written down the stories how 400 years of this has made America great in the first place. Willie is on with us. Willie, it's an honor to have you on the program. Happy Thanksgiving season. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. Thanksgiving means hunting season, so we're all the Robertsons are always excited when this happens.
So, is it turkey or is it duck for Thanksgiving?
Well, Robertsons are never one to limit ourselves, so why don't we do both? So we will have duck and dressing, and we will also fry a couple of turkeys.
Oh, you do the deep fry. I love it. I love the way that tastes.
Is there another way that people cook that?
Yeah, I've heard rumors of it. So
actually, I'm going to smoke a turkey. I've got a great recipe for a stuffed smoked turkey with some Cajun dressing, and so I'm going to get out and smoke a turkey. And so but we will have fried, of course, as well. So there's a lot of us, so we got a lot of food to.
Well, I hope you post that recipe. I think people are going to want that one right there.
It's a complicated recipe. I may have to make a video for this one. It's fairly complicated.
Well, good thing you know some people in the video production business. Willie, talk about what made you, certainly your family and the A&E program that went around your family's business, entrepreneurship, going out on the limb. What made you want to kind of sit down and put all these stories together to remind us that the bad guys in American history are not the ones who go out on a limb to start a business?
No, certainly not. Well, we had written a book, coming out of Duck Dynasty, so we had written a book called, American Hunter and then American Fisherman, obviously things that are close to my heart. And then one of the biggest things was entrepreneurship. And so from as early as I can remember, I was interested in business and interested in selling things. And through grade school, I had a pretty powerful, I was a great business with worm farming. So I raised my own worms and
awesome.
Sold them to fishermen. But that was pretty labor intensive, and my brothers kept stealing my inventory. So I moved on. I got some candy, and I started selling it at school, and that business really took off. And because I had everything that the concession stand didn't have, I sold.
Awesome.
But their sales dropped, and so they met with the principal, and he called me in and shut that business down.
Typical government.
Typical. Yeah, I should have cut him in on the deal, thinking back on it, and given him a little kickback off of it maybe. And so anyway, I went on to I did a human jukebox on the school bus, and so but we also worked for Duck Commander for Dad, and unfortunately he didn't pay us any cash money. He was paying us in room and board and food, he said. So which I do appreciate that now. So I do appreciate that, because it pushed me to say, hey, if you want more, if you want some extra money in your pocket, then you got to go work. And really I found that through all the stories. And so we went back all the way to when America started, and then up until now. And just interesting stories, some people everybody's heard of, and some kind of obscure, people that you haven't heard that story. And they just kind of blew my mind, about what people did and the interesting businesses that they started. And what I found across the board was they all had a really hard work ethic. And you're not going to get a lot and build these great businesses or work for yourself if you're not willing to work. So that comes across in all the stories.
Well, that's what I told all my kids growing up, is find what you love to do, because every job has grind in it. Every job has the grind that you just got to make it through. So you better love it so you can put up with the 80% of it that is either paperwork or, just the unpleasantries of the job, so you can do the part that you love the best. In the book, Willie, you talk about the Native Americans. I don't think enough people talk about how they were, they actually educated the first settlers here in Virginia that no, you don't want to do it that way, do it this way. And I know there was some violence and things like that went on. But the talk about the Native Americans and what we learned from them early on about being entrepreneurial.
Right. Well, you said it best. I mean, without them, people they didn't understand what they were doing. They really did starve to death because they didn't know how to fish as well. So came over here going to fish these waters, and so that was one of the main things that they were taught was how to fish from the Native Americans. And there was a lot of trading and bartering going on between different groups of Native Americans, and so we find things that are that were made in Texas and they ended up in New Mexico. So we know that products were traveling around. Of course, when we brought more horses in, it helped them out as well. And so then they found some of these things that they didn't have. You're talking about gunpowder and some of the things that. So there was a lot of trading going on. A lot of skills were taught, and so it was a different business. Obviously. But the further back you go in time, businesses get different, but it doesn't mean that there's not entrepreneurs.
Well, and I know that friends of mine will argue, but the agrarian life, then you don't need business, you don't need currency. I'm like, well, that's fine until you need a blacksmith. And then, the blacksmith needs to eat too, and, he doesn't have time to farm, and now you got to trade with him. It comes apart almost immediately, this idea of agrarian communal relationships.
Oh, I think so. And that's any business that you need some help somewhere along the way for sure from other people, and so and that's where they were able to step in and help these new pilgrims as they came in. But we were the same way. We needed help with something. We had to figure out. My father had to figure out how to do woodworking. He wasn't a natural woodworker, so we had to get a lathe, and we had to figure out how to do that. And so you build these networks, and I think everyone builds these networks, for themselves. It's that's the way the system works, and I do believe in the entrepreneurial system.
Do you think the kids are getting it, the millennials are getting it, Willie, before we let you go?
Oh, man, it's tough. Yeah, that's why I always say you got to be patient. People say, what's it like, Willie, to be an overnight success? And I'm like, well, Dad started this business 40 years ago, so I don't know what your idea of overnight is. And that's the lesson I want to teach, especially young people. I have kids that age and in college, and I say, hey, it may take a while. You can't just expect this to happen overnight. And so that's really what I tell people.
Well, Willie, I appreciate it. We've got a copy of the book. We may give one away here. Willie Robertson, it's The American Entrepreneur. We're going to be watching your Facebook page for that smoked turkey recipe, okay?
All right. Be like, yeah. I did it with a company, Pit Boss, that I'm doing. So, it may be. Is that out yet? With the Pit Boss? Okay. Oh, it's not out yet. Okay.
All right. Well, it's
Stay
Facebook.
Stay tuned.
All right. Thank you, sir. We'll see you later, sir, and have a great Thanksgiving.
All right, Joe. Great talking to you.
Doubly so this Thanksgiving weekend. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. And thank you for your membership if you've joined in at tertiumquids.org and become a member of the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. Our strength is in our numbers. And for all of us here, thank you for everything. And until next week, so long. And thanks for all the fish.